I'd like to introduce Anna Polishchuk, I hope the pronunciation's right, who is one of the co-founders of LALAFO, which is an innovative app-based horizontal marketplace based in Ukraine, and I think you're now operating 5 different territories. And secondly, I'd like to introduce Wendy Jordan, who is the COO and founder of Encuentra24, which is one of, well, I think it is the leading horizontal marketplace in Central America. You're operating, I think, in 8 territories now, almost all of them in Central America. I think Colombia technically is outside, but so welcome both of you, now that I've actually got you there. So to kick off, maybe I could ask you in turn, just to give a sense of how your businesses have been affected overall by the pandemic, and you know, given where you are in the kind of lockdown and opening up cycle, whether business is beginning to return for you yet, and in what form. So maybe Wendy, kick off, if that's okay.
Yeah, that works great. Thanks, Jonathan, and hi all. Yes, in Panama, of all the countries where we actually started Encuentra, we have had the most amount of, I would say, negative impact in our horizontal classifieds. Costa Rica, our second market, in Nicaragua, they had less impact from the health restrictions as in Panama. We actually had to reduce a lot of our mobility within the country, reducing it to 2 hours per day. This made it very difficult to do real estate and autos. So we had to adjust and change quite a bit in our strategies, yes.
Brilliant. And Anna, do you want to kind of give a sense of where you guys are?
Yeah, and in our case, lockdown started at the end of March, but the government managed to sustain it for only a month. Pretty much people ended it by themselves. And in May, we actually had our highest ever revenues, although in April, our revenues went down, I think 5 times. Traffic went down significantly, and we saw a lot of activity dropping in all of our categories.
Wow, so highest ever in May.
Highest ever in May. And what we actually did, which we think contributed to faster recovery, is that we offered about €500,000 in support to our users to use premium features and advertise on our platform. We think this helped a lot of users to try paid features, and we saw significant growth after we ended the support project.
And do you see that continuing now into June?
We are continuing into June with our support, but it's significantly less than it was. So yeah, the support is less, but the revenues keep growing. So we are very happy with the trend.
Great. So both your businesses are in verticals as well as horizontals, but today we're going to focus on general goods. You're both doing innovative things in transaction. So maybe again, I could ask you both individually to give a sense of what you're doing and how that's going. Maybe start again with Wendy, if that's okay.
Sure. So with us, we actually started trying to do real estate transactions quite a bit, but it was probably not the best timing because of all the restrictions. So we needed to move into what we have been delaying for years, which we'd start doing transactions from our general classifieds. The challenges that we were seeing were related to both the side of the possible scams that could come from either the buyer or the seller, and at what point do we deliver the amount of the goods and the amount of money, and also it has been something that we have been debating for years, and we have requested this for years because we're in a country where there is no post system, there's no delivery of a post office, this type of system we do not have, but recently we have seen a great increment in quick deliveries. These are like the type of deliveries that you use for food delivery, that you can get it in 30 minutes to an hour. And most of these companies are branching out to do all types of errands for you. So we have been working together with a few of them to try to draft out a plan to see how we can be part of these transactions that we saw during, at least during this pandemic crisis. We saw that they were generating much more leads and getting much more sales than any other category within the site. And specifically the electronic category, where people were in a great need of having or a new phone or parts for their phone because they were, all the shops were closed, or they were needing home appliances to cook at home, or a new icebox. Well, not a new icebox, but I would use a used icebox or a used washing machine, which somehow became one of those essential products.
Does this mean also that you've shifted more into B2C than you were before?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. We could almost, we were always B2B, B2C at an equal part, but we weren't as much focused on these categories in the general classifieds as we are now. Yeah.
And I wonder, I wonder whether there's a general question there of whether transaction, and for both of you, I'll come back in a moment to LALAFO's developments, but whether transaction is an opportunity to actually take more value out of the B2C space and makes you more of a competitor to the big B2C players. So whether that's Mercado Libre or eBay or even Amazon Marketplace and so on. Do you see that as part of the opportunity?
Oh, definitely, definitely. This was just an area that where we were monetizing through some featured ads and some repositioning products that we had, but we were not at all focusing any of our manpower into increasing any sales through there. But now we're definitely moving forward with them because all of the businesses, they're closed or they're working with a less amount of staff. So for us, the consumer or B2C models or people-to-people model, they have been terribly interested in focusing on and getting more revenue out of them.
Okay. So Anna, maybe I can turn to you. Maybe you can give us a sense of what you've been doing. And I know this has been in the plan well before COVID, but I think COVID has maybe kind of pushed things forward a bit faster.
Yeah, the particular thing about our strategy is that we remain true to our aim to stay within C2C place, C2C transactions, and kind of consumer-to-consumer transactions. And what we have been thinking about and the challenge that we set to ourselves was how can we actually help people get rid of the stuff they no longer use, because we know that only 2% of people sell their second-hand items on classifieds and marketplaces regularly. So although classifieds are really big in almost all markets, horizontal classifieds, very few people actually use them regularly to sell. So when I'm talking about transactions, I'll be talking about consumer-to-consumer transactions. When we try to solve this challenge of helping people get rid of things they don't use, we actually try to sell 100 items on a classified, and we realized that it's a full-time job and no one in their right mind is going to do that job like for a few weeks to sell 50 or 60 items, 100 items. So we came up with an idea of Freedom Box. Freedom Box is a service where you request a courier. He arrives with the box. You put everything you want to sell or get rid of in the box, and we do everything for you, and you get the money and reviews from you owners. So it's kind of it's kind of an extreme version of a transactional marketplace when we actually handle the items. So we not only control the transactions, but we control everything. After that, we started testing what kind of platform, transactional platform or traditional classified platform sells items better. And we ran a number of tests. We created a separate e-commerce platform, and we listed exactly identical content on e-commerce platform and on LALAFO, which is non-transactional. And we found that the actual sales with exactly identical content were delivered a lot better with a buy now button, without any messages or calls or without anything else. So what we what we actually have done now, we launched our 5th country, Ukraine. I'm based in Ukraine, but we were not active as a service in Ukraine, and we are now. And we launched a new service where people can't really create listings. They can only sell using our Freedom Box service. And we also removed all messages and calls and contacts and only have buy now button. So basically what we are trying to do, we are trying to create an experience where buyers have the same experience buying second-hand items from private people as they would buying new items from professional, shops.
Brilliant. And one of the interesting things, one of the most interesting things I thought when we talked last week about this, about the Freedom Box, was the consumer motivations at work behind the scenes. Could you share a little bit of what you learned about why consumers want to sell their stuff and how that affects their attitudes to the box, to the way you price the items, and to the amount you pay away to them in percent share from the sales you make for them?
Yeah, so Freedom Box is a service for private people. And what they do, they usually put 50 or 60 items in the box, and about 60% is fashion, like clothes, children items, shoes, 20% electronics, and 20% is other like household items. And then average value of a box is about 200 euros. So when box arrives in our processing center, we take pictures and describe items and price them. And then user has to confirm all the actions and agree with our recommendations for prices, for example. To our surprise, what we found is that people don't really care about prices at all. They sort of look at the service as a way to get rid of things, and they're happy if they make enough money to cover the cost of the service, because the service is not free. We charge an upfront fee plus 20% commission. When we saw that people don't really care much about prices, we started playing around with it, and we started recommending zero prices. And about 90% of people are very, very happy to give away for free 50% of their items, up to 50% of their like inexpensive clothes and other inexpensive items. We found it really interesting. And what we don't really get is that people, when we ask people why you sort of pay for the service to give away stuff for free, they say, well, it just feels wrong to throw away stuff. So instead of storing it in their apartments and garages, they are happy to pay for the service.
It's fascinating. I find that absolutely fascinating. So maybe I could ask the both of you. I mean, clearly there's obvious reasons for an uptick in transactions during lockdown. There's presumably going to be still good reasons while people are social distancing post-lockdown. Do you think that these changes are going to be long lasting, or do you think once we're kind of hopefully free of the virus, once social distancing is no longer needed, that people are just going to revert to the old ways of doing this? Maybe Wendy.
Yeah, I believe this is going to be an opportunity to remind them that this was always a source of revenue. Many people have lost their jobs during this crisis, and they're hoping for a way to find revenue. Like Anna was saying, they can just resell things that they have in their home. So this is going to be a good reminder and continue to show to them that these services have optimized their ways and in ways that at least as for Encuentra is going to be completely different than it was before, because before you have to find a way yourself to do this purchase, but now we are innovating and we're finding better and faster ways and more secure ways to deliver it to their homes. And the risk of the health risk is still going to be there for a while. So I believe people are going to go the safer route and continue to purchase online goods that are secondhand, I would say.
And Anna, do you think the habit's going to sustain?
Yeah, actually, found some numbers because actually lockdown has ended in our countries and pretty much businesses are back to normal. And what I found in our database is that revenue from general good categories pre-lockdown was about 17% in our case, and after lockdown it was 30%. So during lockdown, everything went down, but after lockdown, so like it's the last 2 weeks, revenues from general goods categories 30%. So it's, and in absolute numbers they doubled. So although restrictions have been lifted, we can see that people's behavior is changing.
So really they needed to be forced to try something different, and then once they are, they kind of get on and carry on doing it.
It does seem that way, that lockdown forced people to try online shopping and card payments, which is a problem in our countries, and they like it and they keep doing it. So
Wendy, you operate in some particularly challenging markets in terms of dynamics. Could you give us a sense of, what are the real barriers to transaction? What are the things you've had to tackle in order to make transaction work?
For us, it has been the risk from both parties that they could try to scam one another. We see this day to day with these transactions, but we're not involved with them, so we have been able to be clear of these issues. Also, the other challenges that we see is accessibility in certain parts of the country, and the lack of a post office box or these type of systems where you can understand clearly what is the address and location, like in other countries where you get like a number for your home or a post office or postal code. In Panama or in Central America, we rarely get these. We will get maybe a street, but most people don't even know the name of the street where they live in. Google knows it, but sometimes they don't know it. So we have had to find ways to work almost like Uber does, with the GPS, understanding how to pinpoint the location where they are, currently they are, and try to deliver as soon as possible before they actually move. With the quarantine, we understand that they're at home, which is a benefit. But yeah, it has been that, and for that we have also started working with these companies that have lockers. Like those electronic lockers that you can just go in, put in your code, and you can from there make payments, because payments is the other challenge that we have seen. Most people are not using as much credit card. They do online purchases, but they're not familiar, they don't feel safe as using a credit card, or they don't even have a credit card, so they want to try to pay with cash. With these boxes, we're trying to integrate them with our system where we can, the vendor or the salesperson can put them inside of a box, and then whoever's purchasing the box has about 2 days to even pay with cash or with a debit card and open up their locker to retrieve their item. So these are a few of the things that we're already doing. Also with the payments, if they're done online, try to understand when, by GPS or understanding that we actually delivered it to them, when do we free the amount that they have paid. So these are just some of the few reasons why we haven't launched this yet. It's still in a plan, and we're talking with a lot of these providers to be able to launch as soon as possible.
A lot of complexity there. So if you were advising other horizontal marketplaces, do you think that transaction is something you can launch comfortably within existing marketplaces, and do you think it has a natural kind of role, or do you think you have to put a separate brand and a separate face on it to make it work? Maybe Anna could kick off on this one.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would think about it in two ways. If a horizontal is thinking about going into transactions, then firstly, they need to decide what kind of transactions they want, from B2C transactions or P2C transactions. So in my opinion, what classifieds tend to find when they try to move into transactions is that the best sellers are actually businesses, because they do it professionally, they create good content, they respond well, they ship fast, and have a lot fewer problems than private sellers. For this reason, I think if a general classified is happy going into B2C space or sees an opportunity there, then it may be fairly easy to have a buy now button. But if they would like to launch transactions in C2C kind of segment, then it becomes a lot more difficult. We've been thinking about it like for 2 years, and we couldn't find a way to actually create a good user experience in C2C transactions, because very few people, like private individuals, can do it properly.
So we've only got kind of 1 minute left. One last question to the both of you. You know, it's easy to see transaction happening with big items, expensive items, you know, things that you can wrap a lot of trust around in terms of, you know, how you handle them. Is transaction really for those type of items and not for small items? Or is the Freedom Box a way of opening up, you know, the lower cost items? Or can you actually, you know, transact lower cost items more broadly on horizontals without having to take the box approach? Maybe I might just kick off with Wendy first on that one.
It's a difficult one, but for us, we're seeing how we can transact from both the delivery and also from the purchase, because it will depend on how necessary these items are. It could be a cable for your iPhone, and people could need this and would pay whatever is necessary. So it would depend on how small the item and how insignificant it is or significant it is to the person. But I would say, yes, we could transact and monetize from both, but also from the smaller items, yes.
And Anna, you spent a bit of time at OLX amongst other things. You know, would you recommend the box model to OLX, or is it something that that needs you know, its own kind of special care?
When we, like 2 years ago, when we tested the idea of Freedom Box, we used OLX to sell the items, and we know probably more about OLX than OLX themselves. What the challenge with Freedom Box is that operationally it's quite a difficult model, quite a difficult business to run. Although large classifieds and marketplaces have demand, and I'm pretty sure they can be useful in that respect, they would need to create a completely separate business, logistics business that can actually process the boxes. Because, for example, right now we are opening our own warehouse where we do the processing and fulfillment, and I'm responsible for that. And it's a completely different model, although can be complementary and quite useful for large marketplaces and classifieds.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both for a real insight into some very different ways of thinking about transaction and moving it forward. So, thank you. Have I got you both still there?
Yes.
Thank you very much for having us.
Brilliant. A pleasure.
Thanks, Turpin.